All right, and there we go. Now we're live on all of our this social media platforms. I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. We're live. Hey, happy Friday! Happy Friday! I'm telling you what, we got a lot to talk about tonight, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Well, thank you very much. Okay, everybody, listen. Before we get into this presentation, Mr. Producer, roll that footage, if you will.
Fans of Bishop James Long, the renowned exorcist and paranormal expert on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Now you can carry his wisdom with you. Our Bishop James Long collection features blessed apparel such as St. Benedict hats and tees, as well as home items to protect and inspire. Elevate your spiritual journey. Go to kgradb.com/shop and discover the Bishop James Long merch today.
So 100% of the profits obviously would go, that's going to me is going to the MKS Kids Foundation. So make sure you again go to that our sponsor site. That's really, really important. Now, if you want to go to my website, you certainly can. BishopJamesLong.com. BishopJamesLong.com. By the way, you can scroll down like to the middle, and there's a brand new book, a Paranormal Investigators Training Manual. I own the book. I wrote it. It's mine. It's copyright. I have every right to put every single penny that I earn from that book in my pocket. However, as a community, we have decided that we're going to donate 100% of the profits to the MKS Kids Foundation. It's an orphanage in Uganda that we are partnering with. And we are making we are making a massive difference in their lives. I'm telling you, the difference you guys are making in their lives is profound. So please make sure, go to my site and scroll down. You'll see the book. Matter of fact, let me just show it to you very quickly. And there it is. It's 260 pages. And if you just head on over yonder and click on that, and there you go. And of course, the church's site, just go USOCC, and you follow that up with the .org. So tonight we have night prayer. Yep. There it is. So it's a copyrighted picture. Everything. I mean, the whole thing. This is 260 pages. And so, empirical evidence of gods. I don't believe in gods. I believe in one God. But there we go, guys. Head on over and go to you can just go to my site. And Yahweh is another name for God. Jesus is God. So anyway, head on over there, guys. Look, the thing is if we can help support and really make a difference in these children's lives, I'm all about that. You know, the MKS Kids Foundation, it's an orphanage in Uganda. They are legitimate orphanage, by the way. I understand there's a lot of people who are, concerned, especially this time of year, but they are absolutely 100% legitimate. And we are making this community, I'm telling you now, we're making a major, major difference in these children's lives. And I love that. I think if we can do that, we should. By the way, I do have the book. I don't know, Andy. I don't know why you were muted on. The only people that were muted is people who are spamming or who are nasty. Our moderators are very, very experienced moderators. They don't mute people just because. They mute people because either someone is spamming, someone keeps putting it in caps, which is strictly only for our moderators, or someone is saying some really nasty things. So it's one or the other. All right. So anyway, there we go, guys. That's how we're going to roll on this beautiful. Hopefully you've all had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. For those of you on TikTok, if you're trolling, you will not get my attention. We're not a Jerry Springer show here. You're wasting your time. This presentation, we have more than 2 brain cells. And so we don't entertain trolls. As a matter of fact, trolls are actually frowned upon. For those of you who are trolling, you're not going to. No one's going to be say, "Oh, that's just great. That was a good insult." No, actually, we look down upon people who troll, because trolling is a symptom of demonic oppression. You just obviously don't realize that. So we don't find it funny at all, and you're not going to get any attention except for being blocked. That's it. You'll just be blocked. All right. Everybody else, thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, yeah, Sister Tracy, if you can, it's possible, AJ, that someone made a mistake, but our moderators are pretty strict about, when they block people or when they mute people, there's a reason for it. They don't just do it arbitrarily. So, okay. Well, that's a good question, Anthony. Well, that would be Peter. Peter said, Anthony said, who else walked on water besides Christ? Well, Peter. But of course, Peter, when he then started focusing on the waves and became scared and fearful, he no longer focused on Christ and he began to sink. Okay. Yeah. Did you guys have a very good Thanksgiving? I mean, that's hopefully you all did, wherever you are. I know a lot of guys, look, I know a lot of folks right now are struggling with this time of year, especially because some of your family members, your friends might have been, not with you anymore physically. Miss Wilma, for those of you who don't know Miss Wilma, she passed away a couple of weeks ago. And so I get it. I get it. It kind of leaves a hole in your life. But we also know that one day we're going to be reunited with our loved ones. And I believe that with all my heart. With all my heart. So for those of you who are struggling, I understand that. And for those of you who still have family and still have your parents, make sure you give them a big hug, because I would absolutely love the opportunity to give my mom a hug who passed away in 2014. So make sure you take that time, because that's what this is about. That's what life is about. Life is about loving family, loving God, loving one another. And I tell you what, love is something that is missing in a lot of people's lives right now. So that's just the way it goes. And for those of you who don't know, so I'm Bishop Long. I'm the presiding Archbishop for the United States Catholic Church. I also serve as an exorcist, and I have performed now today as of 34 exorcisms. The exorcisms have not always been the same. Some have been quite violent. Some were not so violent as they were more intense in a different way. And so I have no problem about what scares demons, the rosary. I will tell you that plain and simple. Any exorcist who's validly trained will tell you, you will get the most violent reaction from a demonic entity the moment you begin to pray the rosary. The moment you begin is the moment that it is the most violent reaction. And that is, now, again, we're not going to have a debate on worshiping Mary and all. We're not going to do that. I'm just telling you that was an answer, and that is the truth. That is from my experience. Nikki, I am going to open up the classes on demonology again. People have been asking me a lot about the demonology. Here's why I closed the classes. So I had the classes open, available to everyone. No charge. It's my work, so I could charge if I wanted to, but demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. It was 100% online, and you even got little certificates after you completed your test. Here's why I stopped doing it, because the trolls began to steal the information and began producing their own demonology course and charging people. See, this is the type of crap that I get to have to deal with behind the scenes, that you guys are not aware of it. So I gave it, it's my work, and I put it online 100% free. And what was terrible is the same trolls that were trolling me, saying that I'm a fraud and all this other stuff, even though I give everything away, they are the ones that actually were making the demonology courses and charging for it, stealing my information. And so I got so upset about that. So I'm done. I closed it all down. But I have learned since then that God will handle that. And everybody else should not be punished because of the actions of a few individuals that are in fact demonically oppressed themselves. And I'm going to make this very clear. And let me just make this very clear to every single person who's watching. I'm a validly trained exorcist, and I'm telling you now, I've seen people possessed. I have demonic infestation that were very violent. You need to be very clear about this. Trolling is a symptom of demonic attachment. The problem is in our society, we have normalized abnormal behavior. When you purposely use your words to try to hurt another person that you see on the screen, and you sit back and watch and hope that your words hurt that person, that is sadistic. That is sadism. And that is pure evil. So what I encourage all of you, those of you who continue to wish to troll, please stop. Not because I don't really care what you think or say. I wouldn't go to trolls for advice, so why would I accept their criticism? I say please stop because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. But what we are guaranteed is judgment. So let that sink in. We're not guaranteed 5 minutes from now. But we are guaranteed that Matthew chapter 7, verse 2 says you're going to be judged in the same manner that you have judged others. So as clergy, my job not only is to teach and preach to the people who are believers, but also to those who may not be believers or those who are doing things that they shouldn't do. Because whether or not trolls like me or not, that's irrelevant. I still care about them. I care about every human being, those people who pat me on the back and those people who spit in my face. Because ultimately, my goal as clergy is to say, hey, look, you shouldn't be doing this. Not because it affects me, because it affects you. And that's what I've given my life to. All right, today we are going to have a very, very interesting conversation. And again, so far, moderators, if the trolling gets too bad on TikTok, let me know, and I'll put sub chat on like that. Okay, so yes, absolutely, Verge is a Verge. Saint Michael, 100%. So you can call it, there's two forms. There's two types of prayers. There's a longer form and the shorter form. The shorter form is, you can go online and search for that. You know, St. Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the malice and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Do that, will Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell, all the angels. Well, let me just, actually, let me do the longer prayer. You know what? I've never done that. Hold on. Let me do this. Sorry, it's a squirrel. I very rarely will pray the longer prayer. I do during an exorcism. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4, really 5 pretty long paragraphs on the longer form. The shorter form is not as long. That's one that I was just doing. That's very quick, but the longer form has 4. Now you would do also the longer form when you're doing what's called the minor rite of exorcism, because ultimately you elevate a cross or crucifix and you say, "Behold the cross of the Lord, be scattered, ye hostile powers." And so on that you can do the longer form, but you can also just do the shorter form, and that would be absolutely fine. Okay, yeah, there is a longer version. Yeah, if you actually type in the longer version or St. Michael longer form or longer prayer, there's 2 forms: the shorter form, which I just did very quickly, and then the longer form. Yep. Okay, so let's get into our presentation, everybody, because tonight we're going to talk about. No, you can look at that. You can Google that. The types of forms they're in there, guys. All right. Let me pull this up. And let's go. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Aokigahara Forest. The Aokigahara Forest. This is one of the most interesting forests. If you've never heard about this, then sit back and enjoy this presentation. It's pretty intense. If you've ever heard of the person Logan Paul, I think he's now a professional wrestler or something like that. I don't know. But when he was doing his social media platforms, he decided to go to the Aokigahara Forest. And he did something that he should not have ever done, ever. And we'll share that in a moment. So here's for those of you who are new, this is how we do the presentation. The first hour, I always give a lecture. I teach about a topic. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Aokigahara Forest. And then after the hour is over or so, then I'll answer your questions. But that is how we run this presentation. Okay. There is an alarming number of Japanese citizens who have taken a very dark pilgrimage to the Aokigahara Forest. It is more commonly known as Japan's unaliving forest, most commonly by, obviously, a variety of reasons. Beginning in the 1960s, between approximately 10 and 30 people each year spent their last living moments in this forest. It's at the base of Mount Fuji. And in 2003, 105 were discovered. And comprehensive data on lives lost in the forest doesn't seem to have been released since 2003. That is not a good sign. So why there? Well, there's a small patch of serene forest. It is the second most unaliving destination in the world. It's thought to trail only the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So as recently as 2017, Japan's unaliving rate was the 6th highest in the world and was second worst among 8 major industrialized nations. And the number of unalivings in Japan was 21,897 in 2016. And that was the lowest in 2 years. Unfortunately, between the ages of 15 and 39 age group are the people that unalived. But we got to talk about why. Because you need to understand the culture. That's very important. And then you'll understand the Aokigahara. For us, we're going to talk about the scary things and the experiences. We'll talk about that tonight. But I want to give a history lesson on the Aokigahara because there's a logical explanation, a cultural explanation as to why the Aokigahara is a forest in which many people go to. Unaliving is viewed very differently in Japan than in the United States. Yoshinori Cho was the director of the psychiatry treatment of Tikyo at the university in Kawasaki. And he explains while in America, unaliving is most always culturally viewed as shameful, cowardly, or selfish act. In Japan, in some cultures, in some areas, it's actually now still seen as an honorable way to honor a samurai tradition. I want to talk about seppuku. So the seppuku, which is also known as samurai in the Western world, is an ancient samurai act of ceremonial unaliving. It was first recorded in 1180. And they lived by a very strict code that was very much based on the old hardcore phrase, death before dishonor. So the samurai culture developed in the 12th and 13th centuries, distinct from the culture of the rest of the imperial Japan. So they became these groups of warrior monks in a way. And the samurai were bound by the code of Bushido to unalive themselves rather than bring dishonor to themselves or their families and community. So if captured by the enemy was imminent, well, they would commit what's called seppuku rather than be taken. And so in 1945, after the defeat in World War II, many Japanese military officials and civilians committed voluntary seppuku out of a resolute sense of pride, honor that refused to bend to the enemy. And here's how the ritual would go if time allowed, the enemy wasn't kicking down the doors. So prior to the event, the samurai would write a passing away poem because it was felt that the person facing imminent death was believed to have special insight into the nature of death and the value of life. And then a large white cushion would be placed and witnesses would arrange themselves discreetly on the side. And the samurai wearing a white kimono would kneel on the pillow in a formal style, and behind and to the left of the samurai knelt his assistant. So a servant would place a wooden table before the samurai, which would contain wine, cup, and a sheaf of washi, which is a paper, and writing utensils, as well as the kozuko, which is the blade. And although the samurai would be allowed to use his own sword if preferred. So before committing seppuku, a samurai would write what's called a death poem that was considered important, as a person facing imminent death was believed to have special insight. And the poem should be graceful, natural, usually in the theme of transient emotions. And even mentioning the samurai's impending death in a poem would be considered poor form, uncouth. It was also important for the samurai, as the poem would serve as a written glimpse into his nobility of character. So according to tradition, when the samurai felt ready, the samurai would then choose to loosen the folds of the kimono, exposing his stomach. And then, of course, he would obviously do what he needs to do, which I can't obviously talk about in detail, which is a shame because, not to be grotesque, but this is culture. So why exposing the stomach? Well, I thought that was interesting when I was doing research on this. The human spirit was believed to reside in the stomach. And so when you use the blade, it was considered to be the most straightforward, bravest way to pass away. So that act was a privilege reserved for the samurai. Commoners were allowed to do other ways, other than samurais. So the real samurai try to keep their composure, even on the brink of death, and show their strength, full control of his mind and body in the last moments. Now, there was also what's called kamikazes. The kamikaze, they were a group of young Japanese pilots who flew unaliving missions aimed at taking out as many of the enemy as possible. And they would literally crash their planes, never ejecting themselves in an attempt of survival into Allied ships. And like they did during the attack on Pearl Harbor. There were about 3,800 kamikaze pilots passed away during the war, and more than 7,000 Navy personnel were unalived by the kamikaze attacks. So many other countries label kamikaze pilots as insane fanatics, but the Japanese view them more as determined heroes who sacrificed all for the security of their family and the country. And they were voluntarily doing this. And remember, that wasn't that long ago. It was 1940s. And this, again, reveals a very different perception regarding unaliving than typically in the United States. So the Japanese word kamikaze is usually translated as divine wind. They actually train to unalive themselves in battle. I wondered, what did they believe awaited them on the other side of death? Well, the predominant religion historically is Shintoism. It's the world's fifth largest religion. It's a religion of ritual and tradition. And one of the core beliefs of Shinto religion is the idea that everything possesses a spiritual essence or energy called kami. Mountains, rivers, places, animals are all to have kami inside. Shinto belief about death and the afterlife are often considered dark and negative. But the old traditions describe death as a dark underground realm with a river separating the living from the dead. The images are very similar to Greek mythology, like the Hades and Norse mythology. But Shinto traditions lean heavily on the concept of the presence of kami, not reincarnation. So the spiritual energy or kami in everyone is released and recycled at the time of death. So the spirits live in another world, and the most sacred of which is called the other world of heaven. And these other worlds are not seen as paradise or punishment. Instead, the worlds are simply where the spirits reside. They can connect, visit the present world where people correctly perform rituals and festivals. Shintoists believe that the ancestral spirits will protect their descendants. So the prayers and rituals performed by the living honor the dead and memorialize them. Okay, which is really interesting. In Eastern cultures, it's been seen as a way of atonement, restoring honor, like the samurai. Even as recently as 2007, after a high-profile cabinet minister unalived himself while under investigation for financial impropriety, the governor of Tokyo called him a true samurai for preserving his honor. So it's just not looked at the same way. It's one of the ultimate sins in many religions, certainly in the United States, whereas in traditional Japanese faith, it erases the misdeeds of wrongs of the life that's lived and leads to an enlightened soul. Japan is trying to change that cultural attitude. In the early months of 2018, Japan announced it was rolling out a 5-year plan aimed at increasing unaliving. And their goal was to, cut unaliving rates by 30%. So now that you know a little bit about Japan's historical attitude towards unaliving, I think we can peek into the specifics of the forest. Okay. So the Aokigahara, it lies at the base of Mount Fuji. It's known under much less ominous name as the Sea of Trees. Well, there's a lot of unaliving because in Japanese culture, there's an extreme pressure for success, for perfection, and also there is less. I have a friend of mine who is in Japan, and I've talked to him about this. One thing, they don't do well with expressing their frustration or loneliness or anxiety. That's actually considered in many regions in Japan to be seen as a weakness. So they kind of bottle it all up inside. So with Japan, certainly in the previous years, unaliving oneself in a way that a samurai would was considered honorable. Rather than complain and you hate your job, you hate your boss, you hate this, you hate that, that was not seen as honorable at all. Things are starting to slowly shift, but still it's very heavy, that belief in the, stoicism. Yeah, that's a good word. It really is. It's very stoic. Keep your troubles, because in many areas in Japan, they believe that if you go around telling everybody else and complaining and I hate my job and I hate my boss and I hate this, you're putting more stress on other people, and that's not considered respectful. So Mount Fuji, that's Japan's holy mountain, national icon, is the tallest peak in the country. It's pristine, snow cap. Its familiar shape is painted, imprinted in virtually everything you can find in Japan: flags, cups, shirts, hats, posters. So its majestic image, it conjures a sense of awe that transcends time and culture. And it's only 6 miles from the congested streets of Tokyo, but it feels as though it's a world apart. Buddhists have also held that it is a powerful and spiritual place, but the Shinto are the ones who hold it in the highest regard. The Shinto have 8 major shrines at the base of Mount Fuji, hundreds of smaller ones, by the way, throughout the area. I'll get to your questions, guys. I promise. Just write them down, and I'll get to them. Let me do this presentation, and then I'll get to your questions. And now, they have a lot of shrines. The earliest of these dates all the way back to 806 AD, predating those samurai that we spoke about earlier. Climbing the mountain itself was considered an important pilgrimage, and as such required the guidance of a holy monk or priest. So, and women were not allowed out there until 1945, and they were believed by the Shinto to be unclean due to giving childbirth and things of this nature. And thank you, guys, for those of you offering gifts to the ministry. I sincerely thank you. I appreciate you. If you can, give as many gifts as you want. I just turn around and I offer them to the MKS Kids Foundation, as I did today. So please, I appreciate them very much. So today, thousands of people still climb Mount Fuji's slopes for several hours in late summer, usually at night, to see the sunrise from the astounding view. It's considered a sacred, very powerful sight. And it's said that if you have a dream about it, you'll have good fortune. So to get to the isolated forest by train, it consists of about 12 square miles of dense, beautiful forest that grew atop the hardened lava of Mount Fuji's last major eruption back in 864. The lava rock that makes up the ground absorbs sound so well that it actually creates a very hushed environment. It's eerily quiet. And if you were to yell for help, it's unlikely that anyone would hear you. And mostly park workers and people wanting to unalive themselves go to that forest. Not many locals go there. Local children are often advised to avoid it because they believed by many to be a haunted place full of dark forces. And we'll get to that. So the area first started being called the Unaliving Forest in 1960s, when tourists visited the area, began finding the remains while on their hunt for gorgeous views of Mount Fuji. And within a couple of quick decades, volunteers, police, park rangers, journalists, they were regularly surveying the grounds in search for those contemplating unaliving and tried to talk them out of it. And for the remains that are there, try to remove the bodies. If you go to this reason, for any reason, when you get there, you'll find the forest has a small paid parking lot. Unfortunately, too often, has one or several abandoned cars. Now, hundreds of cars have pulled into that lot with their owners, only to eventually leave without them. And a trail leads from the lot into the forest, and there's a sign along the trail that says, "Your life is a precious gift from your parents. Please think about your parents, siblings, and children. Talk about your troubles." And it proceeds to advise you to contact the Unaliving Prevention Association. But you got to remember, many people who make mistakes, for example, like the one finance minister who made a lot of bad decisions, he was considered honorable for unaliving himself in a samurai kind of a way, because by doing so, he took away the mistakes he made by doing what he did. Again, it's a different culture. So if you decide to press on and journey into the breathtaking greenery of the cypress, hemlock, pine trees, you may find some of its natural inhabitants on the way. It is unlikely. There are Asian black bear, bats, mice, deer, boar, fox, rabbit, squirrels. Birds quietly share the environment. And while the sun is up in the forest, you'll hear the quiet chatter of birds. But it becomes deathly silent in the dark. And tree roots and fallen limbs snake through the undergrowth, over and around rocks and small caverns, and create a creeping sense of entanglement. And the first kilometer or about hiking or so, which takes you closer to the mountain itself, it's littered with remnants of other hikers, despite the constant upkeep of the officials. The trail itself is mostly clean, but you will see ribbons and ropes. They are left tied to trees from previous visitors who marked their way back to the trail. Small pieces of garbage, cut credit cards, etc. The further you venture out into the forest past the caves, the more pristine the forest becomes, and also the more foreboding it feels. And if you choose to ignore all suggestions and venture off the path, you're going to get lost, because it all looks the same. So which way exactly did you come from? You have no idea. Given that roughly 100 people have been found each year, unfortunately, officials have stopped posting how many remains that they have found. So most of the unalivings occur a little further off the path. And you got to be very careful with what I say. The Japanese government is well aware of the high number of unalivings in the forest. Short of just no longer letting anyone into the forest, there isn't much anyone can do to stop. So I watched a short 20-minute Vice documentary on the unaliving forest, where a cameraman follows an individual on a walk through some of the grounds. And Hayona is a geologist who works in the forest as an environmental protector. And he regularly goes on patrol in search of people and bodies and people to talk to. And he's lived in the area for over 30 years, and he's found quite a few remains. And Hayona claims, as many of the local rangers do, that he can likely guess who is coming in for a nature hike, who is coming with indecision and doubt, and who is coming to never leave. And those who enter the forest and are contemplating unaliving, but haven't yet made up their mind, often bring a tent. And they use a rope or a ribbon to mark their way back to the trail as they venture off to a secluded part of the wood to contemplate what they're going to do. So they're informal markers. They're everywhere in the forest. And the occasional cut noose can also be found on the ground from those who made their decision. And as Hayona leads viewers on a walk through the forest, often off the trail, he encounters an abandoned tent. It appears to have been there for a few days. And Hayona hopes they're off walking and still deciding, that they still have hope. And pointing out that if a corpse has been found in the tent site, it would have to be cleaned up. And nearby, he finds a creepy stuffed doll nailed upside down to a tree. And the doll wears a striped suit. Its face is ripped up, and nails are driven through its feet and hands. It's basically been crucified in an inverted position. And Hayona says that the doll is a sign of contempt for society, and that a curse has been driven into the tree with the nails. So a short walk leads him to a wooden sign nailed to another tree, presumably by the same person, that reads, "Unaliving note, I came here because nothing good ever happened in my life. Don't look for me." And further into his patrol, Hayona finds another tent in the middle of a trail. This one has someone inside. And park geologist he approaches and asks the man inside if everything is okay. And he lets him know that he's not allowed to camp there, and that he's a nature guard and on patrol. The man apologized but never leaves his tent. And Hayona asks him to take time to think and be positive. And he tells the stranger that it was nice to meet him. He shows him how to leave the park, but he was worried because the guy didn't look like a hiker and he wasn't dressed for the part. And shortly after this, Hayona finds a perfectly intact skeleton on the ground, shows a clear disappointment and sadness. You know, and at the end of the film, Hayona comments that you think you die alone, but that's not true, as he shows the viewers bouquets of flowers and boxed chocolates left in remembrance of another victim of unaliving. It's a short film, but it's impactful. So why the forest? Why there? Well, we know that unaliving is viewed differently in Japan than in the United States. And we know that a lot of unaliving occurs in the Aokigahara Forest. But why do they occur in that particular forest? Why of all locations? Well, the Black Sea of Trees, the answer may lie in a pair of books. The first being 1960s. It's called Black Sea of Trees. And you can order it, unfortunately, off Amazon, and it has not been translated in English, I don't think. It's about young lovers venturing into the Aokigahara Forest to unalive. And it's reportedly written in a romantic tone that glorifies these actions. And in addition to this book, that may be the reason people began to unalive themselves in the forest. Another book published in 1993 may also be the reason of the amount of unalivings have spiked in recent years. It is actually called the Unaliving Manual. And people actually purchase this. It's a controversial book, and it should be. And sadly, there have been many books found along with bodies at the scene of unalivings. And the author in the book claims that he opposes the societal pressure to persevere, and live strong. And he lists the Aokigahara Forest as the perfect place to pass away. And way too many copies of this book have been found in the forest. By a matter of fact, in 2006, the book had sold 1 million copies. So is this book to blame? Can literature really have such a dramatic impact? Well, the rate of unaliving within the forest did increase significantly after the publication of these books. But the unalivings may have well been committed regardless if the books were published or not. Let's start off by talking about the ubaste. Legend has it, in times of hardship, and this is a terrible thing, but it's a true story, families would take their elderly and their sick and otherwise ailing family members to the forest and abandon them, leaving them to pass away. It's actually translated as granny dumping. It was actually the practice of poor citizens in Japan. They would bring their senile elders to mountaintops because they can no longer afford their care. And it's called, it's a true story. And that's it's ubaste. So when families were starving due to famine and drought, difficult choices had to be made to ensure the survival of some. So rather than all those within the home perishing in slow agonizing starvation, an elder would be chosen from the family or volunteer on their own to alleviate the hunger of the others by eliminating one mouth to feed. And in nearly all the stories collected about this little known piece of Japanese history, it is nearly always a grandmother who either volunteers or is taken out to the woods. And in various versions of the tale, a young son carries the elderly woman on his back into the forest. She marks his way home by leaving sticks and twigs on the ground for him to follow back. So the son would leave her in some isolated area near the mountain, and she would wait until her slow and eventually passing came either at the hands of the elements, and thus ridding the family of a burden and better ensuring the survival of the next generation. Matter of fact, and according to 2017 Business Insider article, not only was this definitely a thing, it's making a comeback. So today, amid Japan's demographic and economic woes, a form of this is happening all over again. The ubaste is happening again. Modern day granny dumping doesn't involve hauling seniors up the sides of mountains, but driving them to hospitals or offices of nearby charities, essentially giving them up for adoption. And social worker Fujita told the Times of London, there are a lot of people who have a certain amount of income, but who still live in poverty and struggle terribly with relatives who can't look after themselves. They're reluctant to ask for help because they feel it's shameful. Well, something, an inordinate amount of granny dumping has gone on in the Aokigahara Forest over the years. And they believe that because so much granny dumping occurred at the Aokigahara, it created a bunch of negative spiritual energy and even vengeful attraction to those seeking to end their troubles. See, just like the act of unaliving is looked differently in Japanese culture in the United States and most other Western cultures, the concept of ghost is viewed differently as well, in that it's much more acceptable culturally to believe in ghosts in Japan than it is here. Matter of fact, in 2013, Prime Minister Shinzo displayed and voiced reluctance to move him to his official residence because he felt a bad presence and he thought it was haunted, as had several of his predecessors. He wasn't mocked by his citizens at all. In fact, people basically thought, well, if it's haunted, you shouldn't live there. And a lot of Japanese citizens have no problem at all believing in ghosts, and they don't think all of them are nice. And that brings us up to the Yuri. The Yuris are the vengeful ghost. So spiritualists in Japan firmly believe that the forest is haunted. The Aokigahara Forest is haunted by the Yuri. Yuris are vengeful spirits of the dead. It is thought that the trees themselves have soaked in the malevolent energy produced by the countless unalivings, traumatic deaths that have transpired in the forest. So the Yuri are believed to be a particular type of ghost that has long been held as real in Japanese culture. The belief is that the Yuri come from people who passed away under duress or extreme sadness or anger. Sometimes even the victims of terrible things. And they are the most dangerous of all ghosts. They are believed to usually, but not always, be women, as traditional Japanese culture view women as being more emotional and therefore more capable of producing the extreme emotions required for the yuris. Yuris are terrifying. They're strong. They're capable of immense harm. Even more, they cannot be banished or fully exorcised. They can only be temporarily calmed. So the yuri run on desire alone. And this could be anything from telling a loved one that they miss them to a desire to burn the whole world down. Whatever they want, usually related to some sort of vengeance. Thankfully, they're believed to be commonly tied to specific objects or places, which allows people to generally avoid them. A lot of Japanese spiritualists believe that the Aokigahara Forest is basically a forest full of these objects, of yuris. And if you've ever seen any of the Japanese or Japanese-inspired film, you'll know what these ghosts look like. They are pale women, usually dressed in a simple white dress. They have long, dark hair, often covering their faces, obscuring their identity, and they move oddly and erratically. As a matter of fact, there's a movie where you see this monster, this woman crawling out of this whale, and that is a yuri. They have no ties to the physical realm. They can bend whatever laws they choose and give them the ability to move with terrifying speed. Yep, the Grudge. They can alter the living's vision. This is really important. If you go to the Aokigahara Forest, they say if you have any type of sadness or depression or anything at all, you should stay away from the Aokigahara, because if you don't, then the yuri can make you see things that are hallucinate that are not there. So they're basically like the Grudge or the Ring. So can they be stopped? Well, there are Shinto prayer sheets. They can be placed on an entrance to block or attempt to block yuri from entering. Otherwise, your best odds are to find a way to fulfill the desire of the yuri or simply avoid them at all cost. Yeah, the yuris are quite dangerous. So, yeah, these things, it really is, when you think about this, there's so many societal pressures, and there's financial anxiety and insecurity are also compounded by Japan's culture of not complaining. So there is a term called hikikomori, and that is about financial anxiety. So that you just keep your mouth quiet, don't complain, don't tell, don't talk about it, and unfortunately, there's not a whole lot. Things have gotten better, which is good. So it's believed that over 100 people choose to pass away in the Aokigahara Forest every year. Many people think that number is not even close. That is much higher. A combination of two popular books glamorized unaliving at the Aokigahara Forest, and of course also with the tradition of the granny dumping. That's why so many people believe that the Aokigahara is the forest that many people go to. Financial pressure and a revival of self-imposed granny dumping, modern social isolation, a lack of proper mental health resources could also be combining to keep the unaliving rates high in Japan. And the yuri, these yuris, many people are absolutely convinced that they do exist. So let me do this a little. 1 second, I got to do the puzzle. Okay. Anybody can get easily lost in this forest. Many times GPS and compasses don't work, and that's usually because of the high cover and iron deposits on the topsoil. However, one woman stated that someone cut her tape intentionally, leaving her lost in the unaliving forest. She made it out. The question is who would cut her tape? Some people say the yuri. A lot of people don't know what that basically what you do. Well, when you go, there's a forest, there's a path, and many people will tie a ribbon around the tree leading to right to the path, and they will go deep and deep and deep into the forest. And the ribbon goes all the way down with them. And the reason is they do this is because if they change their mind, then that they can come back out. Some people are saying that, like that one woman who went there, that her ribbon was cut. Thankfully, she didn't go too far into the forest because you can easily get disoriented. Now, many of the park rangers actually, there's two reasons why people put the ribbons. So they tie the ribbon around the tree and they walk all the way into the deep of the forest. There's two reasons. One, if they want to change their mind, they can find their way back out. Or two, they want someone, the rangers, to be able to find the remains so that the remains can be properly buried. Those are the only two reasons why someone would tie a ribbon, unless someone is being really irresponsible and just going in and into the deep inside the forest just to explore. That is not a place that you would want to explore. Well, obviously, just as you care because you're here. We're not, notice, Justice, we're not watching you, you're watching us. Okay. Anybody can get lost there. And several people often hear chilling or abnormal screams while strolling in this forest. And that is believed to be manifested by the eerie. And Japan Times writer shared his experience in the unaliving forest, stating that he heard blood-curdling screams in the forest. And upon further research for the cause of the noise, he discovered the remains of a man. And after quick examination, it was revealed that the body had been passed away for some period. So it couldn't have been the reason for this blood-chilling screams. Another one of the trademarks of the unaliving forest is the ghost sightings. Numerous visitors have claimed to have seen various apparitions floating amid the trees. Yeah, someone was asking, would I go? I would. I would go to this place. I think this would be just for the historical aspect, but it costs also to pray for the deceased. But just because the forest is known for the unaliving attempts by the people, it doesn't simply imply that everyone decides to do this. It is deemed that only those people would pass away who the eerie of the Aokigahara once deceased. And that's important to understand. So if you go in, it really is not up to the individual. It is up to the eerie. Many people who went into the forest in order to unalive came out alive from this forest. There's a Hideo Watana. He was a shop owner. He was interviewed by the Japan Times, and he told that he has seen various people come out of the woods after endeavoring to unalive themselves. And one of the survivors even had a rope still around the neck, and eyes were, well, anyway. And he took her inside, offered them some drink, and afterward called an ambulance and took her to the hospital. A tourist couple once decides to wander off the forest. However, soon they started having a sense of they felt like they were being suffocated. As they were trying to get out of the forest, it seemed that the trees took the form of a living being and tried to enclose them, is what they said. They made it out of the forest with the help of the tape that they had left. Another mysterious fact about this place is once a couple, meandering the forest, get lost, however, shown the way out by the forest by a Buddhist monk. There have been many people that have gotten lost within the Aokigahara Forest, and a monk just shows up and tells them, this is what you need to do. You need to go there. And when they returned, they told the locals about their encounter with the monk, and they came to know that many believers, that there is a monk living in the forest, that people deter from ending their lives. But in fact, there is no monk living there. So it's pretty interesting. Now, I'm going to go into a different conversation about the Aokigahara Forest and tell some of the stories that are kind of bone-chilling. Remember, the Aokigahara is also known as the Sea of Trees. It is a vast, sprawling forest. It basically 30 square kilometers. It's a dense canopy, tangled underbrush, and it really has earned the reputation as one of the most mysterious, haunted, natural locations on Earth. So, yeah, in the 19th and 20th centuries, so Aokigahara reputation is really that was when it really started getting the reputation of the unaliving forest. And by the late 20th century, Aokigahara had become so infamous worldwide. Well, thank you very much. By the unaliving forest. So that's correct. Yes. Yeah, it's actually about Mount Fuji. It's unsettling its volcanic origin. See, the forest grew atop an ancient lava flow from Mount Fuji's eruptions. That's why if you ever see a movie where they have the Aokigahara and they're running through the woods, impossible. That's not possible. You'd break your ankle in a second, because the path is one way, but if you actually go into the forest, there's no way you're going to run, because it is so twisted, and there it creates almost tunnels and underground chambers. You'd break your ankle easily. Let's go into the shadows of the Aokigahara. I want to know what unseen force, what whispers, what apparitions live there. So I have actually looked online, and I've contacted a couple of people, explorers, researchers, locals, and asked them to tell me their stories. One of the most common experiences reported by visitors is the sensation of being watched. So there was one particular hiker who had told a newspaper there in Japan that he was hiking alone, trying to find some peace after a rough year. Said, I read about the legends, but I thought it was just superstition. I ventured deeper, the trees closing in around me. Suddenly, I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. I looked behind me, no one. But then I saw her, a woman in a traditional kimono, standing among the trees, her face obscured by long black hair. She didn't move. She just stared. I froze. I called out, but she didn't reply. And when I blinked, she was gone. And that's when I felt it. A cold wind, a breath on my neck, like someone had exhaled right into my ear. I turned to run, and I swear I heard her whisper, stay. Another visitor, a young woman, decided to camp overnight in the forest. She was seeking solitude and clarity. She thought perhaps the dark would help find some answers to her questions. Oh, I'm not paying attention to the trolls. Trolls, you're wasting your time. Go watch a Jerry Springer show. Well, we don't do that here. You're actually, when you troll, you're not applauded. People look at you in shame. So you're just going to be blocked. Anyway, and this is what she said. It was late, around midnight, when I first started hearing voices. Not loud, but clear, carried by the wind, like whispers just beyond comprehension. I was trying to sleep when I heard my name. It was faint, unmistakable. She said she sat up, heart pounding. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. This would be the Yuri. And suddenly I felt a presence, like cold fingers brushing my face. I looked around, but there was nothing. And then I heard it. A voice, close now, whispering, come back, over and over. I couldn't move, paralyzed by fear. I packed my things. But even after I left the forest, I could still hear the whispers echoing in my mind. That's pretty bad stuff. Another individual, there were some explorers, report seeing a full-bodied apparition. Yeah, the Yuris in Japan, no, they wouldn't be considered demons. They would be considered ghosts. And the Yuris, depending on what the Yuri wanted, Now, many times people will say that the Yuri will call out your name, and it will sound like one of your relatives who may have passed away. I look at the Yuri as demonic, because what they purposely do, there have been some people who've gone to the Aokigahara Forest who've thought about unaliving. They have a tent, and they heard like their mother or something or who passed away calling their name. They left their tent and they try to go after this Yuri or after this voice, thinking that it was their mom or their loved one. And by the time they realized it was dark, they were disoriented. They didn't even know now where their camp was. Thankfully, they were able to make it out. But there have been many people who have said that they've had that situation occur to them. And so that a Yuri would have done that. Yeah. But listen to this. There were some explorers report seeing full-body apparitions, fleeting shadows that vanish when approached. But there was a researcher. This individual was doing a documentary. He was documenting the area for a documentary. He says, as dusk fell, I noticed a figure near a cluster of trees, a woman in white, her long hair hanging over her face. She was staring at the ground, crying softly. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. And when I took a step closer, she turned toward me and her face was hollow, devoid of life. Her eyes were hollow sockets, black voids. I froze. She simply faded away as if dissolving into the shadows. I would absolutely consider that to be 100% demonic. Yeah, yes, not all Yuris are evil, Vert. Not all Yuris are in Japan culture. Here's another one. Perhaps one of the most unsettling phenomena is when footsteps seem to follow or even mimic your own. But when you look, there's nobody there. So let me tell you this story. This was very, very interesting. There was a hiker. He said, I was walking through a narrow trail alone, trying to clear my mind. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. I stopped, turned around, nothing. I kept walking, but the footsteps continued matching my pace. I called out, who's there? Only silence. And the footsteps stopped suddenly, but then I heard them again, coming from a different direction. I felt a cold chill, like the forest was playing tricks or trying to lead me somewhere. Some reports speak of hearing the distant cry of a child, a haunting sound that tugs at the heart. But when approached, the voice vanishes. This individual said, I was exploring a small clearing when I heard the unmistakable sound of a child crying. It was faint, but piercing. I followed the sound, feeling a strange compulsion to find its source. As I entered the clearing, the crying stopped abruptly. And in the silence, I saw a small figure, a child in white, staring at me with empty eyes. I reached out, but she dissolved into the air, only leaving the echo of her cry lingering in my mind. That was actually told by one of the park rangers. You know, these stories are just a glimpse into the terrifying encounters reported by those who have entered Aokigahara, whether hallucinations, spirits, or memories etched into the very essence of this forest. But one thing remains clear: the place holds secrets that defy explanation. You know, one of the things, the stories that we've heard of apparitions and whispers and inexplicable encounters, they raise profound questions. Is there some unseen force at work here? Are there people's minds just playing tricks? Well, many people believe that the Aokigahara is haunted by the spirits of those who have unalived or restless Yuri, bound by the land, they unresolved pain and despair. And in Japanese folklore, you remember, Yuri are often depicted as women in white, thank you very much, with long black hair obscuring their faces, their presence a warning or a curse. Some of these spirits, they linger, unable to find peace, trapped in a liminal space between life and death. Their energy, they say, seeps into the very soil of trees, creating a residual haunting that manifests in whisper. But remember, guys, the Aokigahara's volcanic origins means its soil and caves, they're saturated with natural energy. Some people call that Earth's electromagnetic field. The thick canopy and tangled undergrowth, they create optical illusions. It distorts sound, makes it easy for the mind to interpret natural phenomena as supernatural. The dense, silent woods can induce hallucinations, whether visual or auditory. Some psychologists suggest that the disorienting environment triggers sensory deprivation, leading to hallucinations of spirits or shadowy figures. Another perspective considers the power of collective human suffering. Countless tragedies, despair, grief that have culminated, into this place, like a psychic imprint or a haunted residue. So many people who have that view say that the forest acts as a gigantic psychic amplifier, drawing in the pain and sorrow of those who have passed away there and manifesting its apparitions as strange phenomena. Now, Mount Fuji itself is a sacred site. It is revered for centuries. Some believe that the mountain's spiritual energy extends into the surrounding forest that creates a powerful energetic vortex. And the volcanic activity and spiritual significance of Mount Fuji might contribute to the unusual phenomena experienced in the Aokigahara. So in this theory, the forest becomes a nexus, a place where spiritual and earthly energies collide. I'll get to your questions, guys. I always do a lecture. These are all my notes. I have about 95 pages of notes that I put together just on this presentation alone. So we'll get to them in a moment. Now, there is a natural hallucination hypothesis. Skeptics argue that all these phenomena can be explained by natural causes. See, the brain under stress or grief can produce vivid hallucinations. The sounds of the wind, the rustling leaves, footprints, the play of shadows, and the sensory deprivation, the silence, the darkness, the isolation. Many people say it can cause hallucination that feel real. The human mind is remarkably suggestible, especially in a place so oppressive as Aokigahara. And many people also believe, who have explored the forest, believe that the Aokigahara is a place where the veil between the world, the spiritual world, and our current world is thin. And the natural environment, combined with human tragedy, spiritual energy, creates a perfect storm for paranormal activity. So look, whether it's spirits, demons, environmental illusions, a collective grief manifesting as ghostly encounters, Aokigahara remains a place shrouded in mystery, no matter what. Now, there have been recent encounters. And despite the passage of decades, Aokigahara continues to be a place of haunting mysteries. And unfortunately, people still go to this location to unalive. Last year, a seasoned explorer named Takashi decided to spend a night within the Aokigahara, determined to document the supernatural phenomena reported by others. So they had cameras, recording devices, open mind. He entered the forest at sunset. Takashi said, I wanted to see if I could capture something, a voice, shadow, anything. And as the sun dipped below Mount Fuji, darkness crept in, he said. I set up my camera near a small clearing. Hours passed, and I started feeling a strange heaviness, like the weight of unseen eyes watching me. And suddenly, he said, I heard footsteps approaching, crunching softly on the undergrowth. I froze. Camera pointed, and to my astonishment, I saw a figure in white, standing just beyond the trees, watching me silently. I called out. It did not respond. When I blinked, it was gone. He checked his footage. No sign of the figure. Just static. Tree shadows. But the feeling of being watched, it persisted, growing stronger as the night even deepened. And in 2019, a search party was dispatched after a tourist went missing. The group scoured the forest for days. But when they finally found the missing person's belongings, they uncovered something disturbing. The search leader reported, we found her backpack near a small cave, but no sign of her. What was strange was that her belongings seemed untouched. No signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. But then we noticed something odd. In the corner of the cave, faint handprints left on the damp wall. But the prints seemed to be made from something inside out, as if someone was trying to push into the rock rather than out. The missing woman was never found. The search was called off, but the officials reported that some members of the team experienced inexplicable feelings of dread and even saw shadowy figures darting just beyond their vision, like a portal. And by the way, there's a professional photographer, Mika, wanted to capture the surreal beauty of the Aokigahara's landscape. But her trip turned into a nightmare when her camera began malfunctioning. Her images revealed something inexplicable. She said, I was taking pictures of the forest at dawn, trying to get that perfect shot. When I reviewed my photos later, I noticed strange figures lurking among the trees. Shadows with no source. Faces blurred as if distorted by some unseen force. One image showed a pale figure in white, standing right behind a tree, staring directly at me. I didn't notice her in real life. And when I looked back at the forest, she was gone. And after that, I kept hearing footsteps around my tent, even though I was alone. And even some recent visitors claim to have encountered entities that defy explanation. One such story involves a researcher who entered the forest to investigate alleged portal sites. This individual was a paranormal investigator that I contacted, and this is what he said. I was exploring a small cave system when I suddenly felt a cold presence. The air grew thick. I saw a fleeting shadow dart past the corner of my eye. I turned, there was nothing. Then I heard a child's cry. Faint, unmistakable. He told me he followed the sound, and it led me to an open clearing when I saw a tiny figure, a child, sitting silently. And as I approached, she looked up, but her face was blank, devoid of emotion or recognition. She simply disappeared into the air as if dissolving. A lot of people say they're experiencing that. You know, these recent stories remind us that Aokigahara is still very much a place of mystery. And whether these encounters are caused by restless spirits, environmental illusions, something darker, it's still puzzling. Some actually believe that the forest is alive, that it feeds on human despair, growing stronger with each tragedy. Other things is just natural. So what is it that keeps this darkness alive? Is it the spirits who've long gone, or natural force, collective energy, or from human suffering? Perhaps something even older, a malevolent intelligence that preys on fear. There's a lot of theories on the Aokigahara. And in this hour, I've talked about legends, personal encounters, the kamikazes, the samurais, recent sightings. But now, as we approach the conclusion, I think it's time to consider what could explain the haunting phenomena of Aokigahara. Are these spirits, illusions, something darker? See, many people believe that the Aokigahara's reputation as a place of death has created a magnet for spirits of those who have unalived at the Aokigahara Forest. And these restless yuri, as they are called in Japanese folklore, are thought to be unable to move on. Their pain and despair lingering in the very essence of the forest. In this view, the energy of their suffering manifests as apparitions, whispers, shadowy figures, echoes the unresolved anguish. The forest, cursed or haunted by these spirits, act as a conduit, trapping them in a liminal space between life and death. It is interesting. I've spoken to several paranormal investigators who've gone to the Aokigahara Forest, and they have all heard the yuri. They've all heard the screams. Another explanation hinges on the collective grief and tragedy tied to the forest. Over centuries, countless individuals have passed away there. Their stories becoming part of the land's psychic essence, really. I mean, some theorists suggest that this collective trauma creates a psychic imprint, a haunted residue or residual energy. And this energy in turn manifests as apparitions or whispers or inexplicable phenomena. The forest becomes a mirror of human suffering, amplifying emotions like despair and loneliness. There is, of course, as I mentioned, the argument of the natural environment, illusions, psychological triggers. So skeptics argue that all these phenomena can be explained by natural causes. The dense canopy, the volcanic geology, all creates optical illusions. But there's another theory, the forest's spiritual energy and vortex. Mount Fuji is a sacred mountain, revered for centuries. Some believe that the mountain's spiritual power extends into the surrounding land, creating an energy vortex where the natural and supernatural collide. In that view, then Aokigahara acts as a portal or a nexus between the world of the living and the dead. Some people believe that the forest is a living entity. That's a more esoteric idea, and that the Aokigahara isn't just haunted by spirits, that it is a living, malevolent consciousness. Some believe that the forest feeds on human suffering, growing stronger with each tragedy. In that view, the trees, the soil, the underground caves are all part of that sentient entity, dark consciousness that encourages despair. No matter which theory resonates most, spirits, demons, environmental illusions, collective griefs, one truth remains. Aokigahara continues to hold its secrets close. Its shadows stretch far beyond what we can see or understand. Perhaps some places are meant to remain mysteries, sealed in darkness, and silence. Maybe the forest's true nature will never be fully known. I think if you take anything away from tonight's presentation, let it be this. Some places are more than just physical places. They are repositories of pain, memory, unseen energy. And in those places, the boundary between our world and the next is disturbingly thin. So if you ever find yourself near Mount Fuji, beware of the sea of trees. I will say this very quickly. Let me, because I want to share one thing with you. Deep beneath the forest lies a cave system that very few people have explored. Local legends speak of a cave of echoes, where voices and screams from the past are said to reverberate, endlessly. Some explorers have entered only to hear their own voices distorted and multiplied, as if the cave itself was like a living recording device. Also in those caves, remember the granny dumping? Many people believe that that's where, unfortunately, a lot of the elderly would go in this cave. At least they would have some type of something over their heads. And one researcher attempted to record these echoes, claiming that his equipment captured strange, unexplainable sounds, whispers, screams, even faint crying. They were not present when he was live. Unfortunately, he heard him. He absolutely heard these. But when he played it back, there was nothing there except for static on the digital recorder. There are reports from modern-day hikers and scientists who claim to feel an unseen presence watching them, persistent malevolent gaze. Some describe a sensation of being scrutinized or followed. One hiker said that he felt a hand brushed his shoulder, and when he spun around, no one was there. Others have reported seeing faint, shadowy figures lurking on just a little bit beyond their vision. There's a very, very famous case. A driver claimed to have seen a car ahead of him in the forest. It's an old abandoned vehicle with its doors wide open. And curious, he followed it only to find it suddenly disappear into thin air. When it pulled into the parking lot, disappeared. Now, some explorers have reported stumbling upon a small hidden shrine deep within the forest, often surrounded by strange symbols or offerings. These shrines seem to be deliberately concealed, tucked away from among the trees. Their purpose remains unknown. So it really is. Aokigahara is a place of endless stories, some documented, others whispered, shadows. It's a landscape alive with secrets, beckoning the brave, the curious, the desperate to uncover its truth. And perhaps some mysteries are better left unspoken, the truths forever hidden behind the trees. This is a place, I think, that the energy that people have left behind has imprinted somehow. I think what many people are experiencing is what's called residual energy. Residual energy is not an intelligent haunting. They have no concept that you are there. They have no concept that they are there. It's actually just residual energy. If you've ever been to a place, an old historical place, and you walk in and you just feel that energy, that's residual energy. And the theory is that energy has been imprinted on that location. And many times I think people are seeing this. As a matter of fact, in a lot of battlegrounds, there have been videos where you see Civil War soldiers just going around in circle, like as if they are marching. They have no concept that you're there. They have no concept that they're there. They're not really even spirits. It's just residual energy replaying over and over. But I don't think all of it is residual. And the reason is because there's too many people experiencing hearing their names. Yeah, like Gettysburg. There are too many people who are reporting hearing their names being called out. People who have left the path, gone into the forest to perhaps consider unaliving, and they're out in the tent in the middle of the night, and they will hear their names being called out. There have been several reports, quite a few actually, of people who were thinking about going back to the path and going back home, but they heard their voice and they got disoriented. It's interesting. Here's what's very interesting. In every single case that I've read about someone who had a tent, who was going into the Aokigahara Forest, they were contemplating unaliving themselves. But here's what's really interesting. It's in the middle of the night. So they're going to stay there at night because it's too dangerous to hike all the way back to the trail. Because again, it's really uneven pavement. I mean, the ground, you could easily break a leg. So they wait. They decide, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get some help. And they stay the night for safety reasons. In every single case that occurred, they heard their voice, their name. Someone calling them out of that tent. In 100% of those cases that I've read, and I find that very interesting. That to me is demonic. Because that, in fact, is trying to push this person out of their tent to disorient them. And that's a problem. So in every case that I read where someone has this tent, a lot of times, if you have a tent, one of the rangers said that if when they go and they walk to see if there's anybody out there contemplating, they always say that a tent is a good sign. Because a tent means that the person is contemplating. They haven't made the decision. They're contemplating. Whereas a person who goes there with no tent, they've already made the decision. They're not going to camp out. They're not going to think about it. They're just going to immediately just do what they got to do. So when you go and you see a tent, the ranger said that that's at least a good sign that that there's hope. But every time a person goes in there with a tent and they're thinking about unaliving and they make the decision, I'm going back home. I'm going to stay the night here and I'm going back home. They hear their name being called. And it always usually sounds like a family member who passed away, which immediately once they get out of the tent and they go and they're disoriented. They have no idea how to get back to their tent. And there have been several cases where people, thankfully, they've been able to get, to the road. But in every single case, they've said they heard their voice. or they heard a loved one calling them. That would be the eerie. So that's what I'm saying. That's a demonic, because the individual said, no, I'm going to push forward. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to push forward. And the eerie says, oh, no. And then they start calling their name. Yeah, the forest is feeding. So that is the Aokigahara Forest, everybody. But life is precious. Life is precious. And when I did the research, I just, the term granny dumping, some do, a faith, that was just mind-boggling. But see, that was honorable. If you had during times in Japan rather, when times were really tough, when they had severe drought, when they had food shortages, families had to make a decision on how they're going to survive, especially if they had children. And it was considered honorable that either the grandmother or grandfather or both would say, no, take us to the forest, because they're giving life to the next generation. So that was considered honorable. That was not seen as something bad or evil. So that's what they would do. They would take the grandparents to the forest, and they would, it's called, the term is granny dumping, and they would leave them there and they would perish. But that was an honorable passing, because that means they're guaranteeing the next generation. That still, it is, in some cases, granny dumping still occurs, but it's no longer at the Aokigahara Forest. Now there are, social services, so hospitals or things of this nature that they're doing. It is sad. It is very, very sad. But there we go, guys. That is our Aokigahara Forest presentation for tonight. We have a lot of articles, but if you have questions, I know some of you have been waiting patiently. Some of you have not been waiting patiently at all, and some of you have been rather rude. There have been quite a few people being blocked. Can you imagine? People being blocked on TikTok? Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Okay. Well, they didn't consider it a blood sacrifice. They consider that to be honorable, because if you are a grandparent and you were older and your health was bad, thank you very much, and you had grandchildren, you would want the grandchildren to survive. And in that way, you sacrifice your life so that the future generation can live. And that was considered honorable. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Well, thank you. That's really, I appreciate that. So any questions you guys have? Otherwise, we're going to jump right into our, we have a lot of topics, a lot of very cool topics to talk about tonight. Not topics, articles that I want to present to you guys. Some of them are really, really cool. Okay, let me just grab something here. Black Shadows. Yeah, I've never been there. No, it's actually quite expensive to travel to Japan. It's not cheap. I'd have to win the lottery. So, okay. This was a recent article that I want to pass on to you guys. This was by T.K. Randall, writes, Dan Farah believes that the presidential reveal of alien life is only a matter of time. He is the director of a new documentary called Age of Disclosure. Thinks that a United States president may soon reveal the existence of alien life. Imagine the scene. The U.S. President's office calls a press meeting and invites the representatives from all the world's press to attend a very special announcement at the White House. Then the president walks up to the podium and, with the eyes of the world upon them, reveals that members of an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization have been visiting the Earth. It might sound like a scene from a movie, but according to Dan Farah, whose documentary Age of Disclosure is currently making waves in the UFO scene, scenario is all but inevitable. By the way, I believe that I interviewed him on the show. He says, I think it's only a matter of time before the release of this film is followed by a sitting president stepping to the podium and telling the world, we are not alone in the universe. It is the most significant moment a leader could possibly have. And according to Farah, Trump himself is aware of the documentary. Quote, I know the movie is on his radar 100%. And look, President Trump said on the campaign trail, that he's intended to declassify what the government knows about the topic. He said, I really hope that the release of this documentary leads to the United States government finally revealing everything it legally can to the American public regarding UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, that's what it means, and non-human intelligence. Age of Disclosure is now available to watch on Amazon, I believe. So you can go over there. It's actually very good. A lot of information there. I believe, look, to think that we're the only human, we're the only life existence in the universe, I don't buy that. I don't buy it. Why do they not reveal? It's a good question. Many people believe they already have. Many people believe they have. The Age of Disclosure. Black shadows, shadow people. Shadow people, I have been to quite a few places that had demonic activity and that had activity, but I would not classify as demonic. I have seen shadow people at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. I've seen shadow people at the Gates of Hell Cemetery. And one thing that I can tell you is that there's no consistent pattern as far as, I don't think anyone can say all shadow people are evil. That's not, from my experience, that's not true. If it was, I would tell you. But I have been, like I said, Waverly Hills many times. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been to Waverly Hills so many times. And I've seen shadow people. I never felt threatened. And I've been to the Gates of Hell Cemetery quite a few times in Kentucky. And I've seen shadow people, and I absolutely felt threatened. So that's the thing. The theory is it's energy. Demonic spirit doesn't need energy to manifest. Human spirits, here's the theory as far as human spirits, ghosts, that they require energy to manifest. That's why a lot of times, if you're a paranormal investigator, many times your batteries may be completely full, and as soon as you walk into a location, your batteries go from 100 to 0%, just like that. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. Certainly in my investigations. Aliens are extraterrestrial, or are they demons? No, a lot of people ask me, do I think aliens are demons? My friends, listen to me. First of all, obviously it's a question that can't completely answer because we haven't had proof that aliens exist. I know for a fact demons exist. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. None. I've never seen an alien, so therefore I can't really argue whether or not of their existence or nature. But demons, I absolutely know that demons exist. But I will tell you, are aliens demons? Well, but demons don't need spaceships. So the only reason that an alien would need a spaceship is obviously because they contain some body, a corporal being. Well, whatever that might look like, we don't know. So, but demons don't need spaceships to fly around. So I think that in of itself kind of makes me scratch my head and say, I don't know about that part. Are demons bad? 100%. Anyone who tells you that demons are not bad, they are misleading you. They are misleading you. So I'm telling you, there's a lot of people telling it's age of disclosure. There are people who are saying you can change the nature of a demon. You cannot. That is not true. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Heck yeah, 3 years. That'd be great, Judy Ann. You cannot change the nature of a demon, no matter what anyone tells you. And I really wish people would stop teaching about demonology when they have no training in demonology. I've devoted my entire life to the study of theology, philosophy, demonology. I really am deeply concerned about people going online and teaching about demonology, and what they're saying is absolutely incorrect. There are people say, well, I'm going to pray for demons. Let me give you a little hint. They don't want your prayers. They have already been judged. They have already been condemned. You're not going to change their nature. And anybody who thinks they're going to is fooling themselves and others by telling people, pray for them. They were in the very presence of God, and they still freely rejected God. So what makes you or anyone think that, well, we're going to change their mind because God couldn't? See, that's ego. That is, and it is absolutely 100% incorrect. So friends, please, they've already been condemned because they already knew the objective truth. They were in the presence of God, and they still rejected God. So they have been condemned. There is no repentance. So again, understand that. No, I never helped Lorraine with any of her cases. No, I was friends with Lorraine, but I never helped with any cases. Yeah, here's the issue with ghosts. There's a lot of people think that all ghosts are demons. I have not found that to be true. I just haven't. If it was, I would tell you. There's nothing. I'm not trying to be rude, but that's not what I've experienced at all. As a matter of fact, even in Scripture, it says when Jesus was walking on water, the disciples were terrified. They thought they were seeing a ghost. And they say, aha, but it meant demon. Incorrect. The term for that they use on ghost and demon are two different terms. When Jesus appeared after being crucified, the disciples, they were terrified. They thought they were seeing a ghost. And Jesus said, ghosts don't have flesh and bones as you see that I do. If ghosts did not exist, Jesus would have said, don't be silly, ghosts don't exist. I have been into many locations where they had paranormal activity, but it was not violent at all. And so I would pray for the repose of the soul, the prayer of absolution, of absolution of sins, and ask for the intercession of their guardian angel to help. And it was unbelievable. There was one time, there was a case in Louisville, and their AC, their air conditioning was out. It was in the middle of summer. It was 95 degrees. It was hot, horrible. And it was 95 degrees in the house. But they had some activity occurring, but it wasn't violent. You know, things being moved, or they would smell like cigars or smell smoke. Which is interesting because the previous owner of the house smoked. And so they didn't like it. And they wanted me to bless the home. There was no violence. There was no growls. There was no religious objects that are desecrated, no smelling of sulfur. There was nothing violent in any way. So we all formed a circle. We began doing a prayer of absolution. And we all felt this very cold, Bishop David Price was, this very cold wind started at our feet, and it moved up to our knees, and then it just disappeared. I had one of those digital temperature gauges, and I pointed it right at the floor. So we did this before, we did the baseline reading before we did the prayer of absolution, and it read 95 degrees. And as soon as we all said, did you feel this? I immediately got the temperature gauge, changed it. It was a 30-degree temperature drop. 30 degrees. Now that is profound. But never once did we experience anything. We were never uncomfortable, ever. We never felt like, no, so for example, our spidey senses. Let me tell you something. You don't need any equipment with you. When you're in the presence of a demonic entity, I'm telling you, your entire body is going to tell you, get out of there. Everything in your body is going to tell you, run. So you don't need devices. But when we were there, there was nothing of that. And it was a very beautiful moment. And I know it sounds cliche, but it just seemed like the whole room got so much brighter. And it wasn't heavy oppression. You could just feel that something needed to be released. So, oh, that's good. That's good, Kumar. That's thank God. Yes, absolutely. When I was at Bobby Mackey's, I absolutely felt the demonic presence. Let me say, I tell this to people all the time, and I'm not telling you this for bragging. I explain it because there's no other ulterior motive. I don't get paid as a bishop. With the United States Old Catholic Church, we don't get a salary. We don't receive retirement. We're not given a church. There's no paycheck whatsoever. We support our ministry with our own money. I have never charged one dime. In all the homes that I have blessed, no matter what state they're in, and in the 34 exorcisms that I performed, I have never charged, ever. I pay for it out of my own pocket. And up until recently, I've had help. For 23 years, I did this by myself. I'm telling you this because I have a doctorate in ministry and 3 master degrees. I was a dean of a college. I've dedicated my entire life to this ministry. If I didn't know that possession exists, I would do something else with my time. So I tell you that because there is no ulterior motive. Yeah, Bishop Long, but you're selling a book. I sure am. And 100% of the proceeds is going to the MKS Kids Foundation, an orphanage. So I receive nothing. You're doing it for fame. You do things for fame to make money. If you don't charge, you're not going to make any money. It's kind of hard that's kind of stupid. So I'm telling you this because there's a lot of people out there saying that demons don't exist. They are incorrect. Now they're telling you demons may not exist from their perspective. I get it. That's fair. That's fair. But I'm telling you from my perspective, I would not be devoting my entire life to this ministry if I had one doubt. Because if I was making $50,000, $60,000 a year salary, well, then you could say, aha, there's your ulterior motive right there. I receive no benefit from this. There's no, as a matter of fact, it cost me, I put $15,000 on my credit card to help people. So there's no benefit to this other than me helping. Possession, whether people likes it or not, possession exists. It is rare. In 25 years, I performed 34 exorcisms. Recently, I performed my last one. I have blessed thousands of homes where there was incredibly violent activity. So I have no doubt. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. As a matter of fact, let me show you 1 second. One sec. This is at the Gates of Hell Cemetery. So the Gates of Hell Cemetery is a location that I named the Gates of Hell. It was over 20 years ago. No one even knew this place existed. But some people contacted me and asked if I would go and bless the grounds because there were some people that were desecrating the area. And I did, and I investigated that location. All hell broke loose. There's a documentary that I did. It's on Tube to the U. You can go there, called Gates of Hell. This is one of the EVPs we capture. So anyone who tells you that demons don't exist, oh, yes, they do. Perfect example. Is there anyone here? Are you friendly? So you're not going to tell me the demons don't exist. So that happened at the Gates of Hell. We didn't hear anything. There was no disembodied voice. We didn't hear, there was nothing there, but we absolutely heard it when we played it back. But that's just one. There are so many. There is, this is a soundbite of one of my exorcisms. This gentleman, he would go into a trance. He scared his wife terribly because he would go into this possession and he would stand right at the bed and he would rock back and forth. And she told me, I said, I need you to record this when he does it. We know for a fact, there's some debate. I took it to a couple people, a couple sound engineers, and there are, 17 tones, 17 pitches at the same time. 17. That's humanly impossible. But stay with me, TikTok. We're going to be with you guys, and we're going to stay with you guys for a little bit. For those of you who are listening to this on podcasts, I would like to say good night to you guys. Okay, I want to remind everybody that we're going to be here again in TikTok. We'll stay with you guys for a little longer, but we're going to be here again tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for night prayer. And then after night prayer is over, usually around 10:40, we chill out and we have a conversation. So we're on TikTok after that. But for everybody else, thank you for being here. Cherish life. Remember that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You are priceless, and don't let anybody tell you or convince you otherwise. Until next week, we'll see you guys later.